Nowadays, designer and sacred go hand in hand. Discover the converted religious buildings where we do not necessarily go to pray. We're in the Place Saint-Vincent in Nantes, France. And hidden behind the doors of this restaurant is an unusual establishment. Here we dine under the vaults of a former chapel.
Have you made your choice? When I came to visit, I was completely won over. When you're standing downstairs, you really don't expect to find such a place upstairs.
Religious buildings are becoming increasingly exploited nowadays. An investor bought what was left of this 16th century chapel after the Second World War bombings.
To begin with, it was a 600-metre square cabaret. It was in operation between the 1950s and 70s. Then from 1970, it was taken over by a new owner who separated the restaurant from the nightclub.
The chapel was divided into 2 levels, and it's no longer mass wine being served downstairs. Religious buildings are currently all the rage, as we see with this former church also in Nantes. It's recently been renovated and is now used as a showroom for an interior design company.
This is actually an old Jesuit chapel. It was their private chapel. Only they had access to it. You can see the altar. This was where the Jesuits conducted their private mass. We instantly thought that it would be a good idea to place ultra-modern furniture in such an old place.
The contrast is striking. The place is completely unique. This designer felt it was essential to not make too many changes.
We did not make huge changes in the old chapel. We simply painted the floor white. Here we have the old mezzanine that we have turned into a meeting room. And you can see the baluster that we have conserved.
And behind the wall is another showroom of impressive proportions, situated in the main nave. The architecture of these religious monuments is becoming trendy and can be adapted in many ways. They can even be slept in. This former 12th century abbey has been transformed into a quaint hotel.
It was a very important place. There were over 500 monks here. There, you can still see the ogives from the time of the Cistercians.
It's a magnificent site and bears witness to the influence of the church several centuries ago at just 50 kilometers north of Paris. We have the impression we're seeing a little bit what it was like to be a monk in times gone by.
Visitors are transported to another place. There is a mystical feel to this place. We have the impression the walls have resonance, which is very pleasant. We have really tried to maintain a feel of a family home here.
Nowadays, religious buildings are enjoying a new lease of life and are even designer. It's a new way of bringing people back to places that in most cases have been abandoned by worshippers. François Jeannot is the architect who looks after the Mont Saint-Michel. He reveals the secrets of this popular tourism spot and sacred destination. With over 3 million visitors each year, the Mont Saint-Michel is one of France's most popular monuments. It's as famous for its abbey as it is for the omelette served at Mère Poulard, and it contains hidden treasures. At the heart of the abbey, we meet up with François Jeannot, one of the few who holds the key to the secrets of Mont Saint-Michel.
We're on the balconies of the ambulatory, the chancel and the chapels. This is a special place because the public never have access to it. It is one of my favorite views of the church because we can see the flying buttresses and the strength of these stone arches, these flying buttresses that support the chancel arches.
From here we can see the beauty of the site and above all the extraordinary architecture of the building, a jewel from the flamboyant Gothic period. This stone staircase leads us to the mall's highest balcony, 120 meters up from water level. Only a chosen few have access to this feeling of vastness.
It is unique. I do not think there is anywhere else like it in the world.
Many parts remain closed to the public. Opposite this majestic fortress, to the north and around 100 meters below, is a garden.
Nowadays, it is known as the Bois du Nord, the North Wood, because it is covered entirely with trees. But no one would assume that in medieval times, this land was a rock.
In the 1920s, the gardens were developed so that they could be visited by the public, but due to a lack of upkeep, the vegetation took over, and it is now practically impossible to reach them.
I put together a project to reopen and redevelop the Bois du Nord. The project is on standby, and maybe we will get to it one day.
We go back to the Mont Saint-Michel's labyrinth of corridors. Since the 8th century, they have constructed over existing buildings, to such an extent that the very first chapel is almost forgotten about.
Here we are, below the west balcony, the large upper balcony that we see there. And this was where the first church was. You have to imagine this chapel. Nowadays, we call it Notre Dame sous terre, meaning underground. And obviously, it was built in open air, on the rock, probably replacing a building that was already there.
Archaeological digs have shown that the mole's architecture dates back to before the 8th century, notably thanks to these stones.
They tell their own story. This story is that they are probably the remains of a previous building. It is rather poignant, because here we are at the heart of the mole's history.
The Mont Saint-Michel is magical and remains full of secrets.